Hello everyone, welcome to Physics Wallah English YouTube channel. I'm Shalini Somashekar, your botany teacher, and in today's session, we are going to be dealing with the last part of the chapter, Morphology of Flowering Plants. So we've had 3 other sessions from this chapter previously. In the first session, we learned about the roots, stem and leaves, basically the vegetative parts. We learned about its morphology as well as the modifications. In the second lecture of this chapter, we covered inflorescence, flower, its parts, fruit and seed. And today's session is going to be the last lecture of this chapter. In today's session, we are going to be dealing with the following things. So previously you learnt about the different morphological features of the various parts. Today you will learn how or what is the right way to describe a flowering plant. So if you come across a flowering plant and you want to describe it, write about its morphological features, there is a way you should do it. There is a sequence that you need to follow. So in today's session, I'm going to be teaching you how exactly you do that. And we'll also be learning about the description of 3 angiosperm families, Fabaceae, Solanaceae, both of which are dicot families. And we will also be learning about Liliaceae, which is a monocot family. So in today's session, we're going to be covering how to describe an angiosperm plant. After today's session, if you come across any angiosperm plant and you want to describe it, you can easily do it. All right? So what exactly do we mean by description of an angiosperm plant? You know that there are so many variations in the different parts of a plant, right? Roots are of 2 types. There's taproot, fibrous root, and then leaves come in so many varieties, and stem can be so different. So the different parts of the plant is very variable, right? When you describe a plant, you write about what exactly that plant has. For example, when you take a plant that has a taproot, you describe the root of the plant. Then you consider the stem, you describe the stem of the plant. Following that, you describe the leaf of the plant. So in this way, you go on describing the different parts of the plant. That will give us the description of that particular angiosperm plant. Okay, so whenever you're describing an angiosperm plant, there are a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. Firstly, the description has to be very brief. You should not write stories about how any part of the plant is. It has to be brief and short. And secondly, the language that is used has to be simple and scientific. All right, so while describing a plant, you have to keep it simple and use scientific language, and also the description has to be extremely brief. And also, it must be presented in a proper sequence. In the beginning of today's session, I mentioned that we're going to learn exactly how we describe a plant. What I basically meant was I'm going to tell you the exact sequence in which the plant has to be described, right? So whenever you're trying to describe an angiosperm plant, we start off with its habit. Now, what do we mean when we say habit? Habit basically represents whether the plant is a herb, whether it's a creeper, whether it's a shrub, whether it's a grown tree. So that is basically the habit of a plant. Okay. So following habit, we talk about vegetative characters. You know that vegetative characters or vegetative parts of a plant are root, stem and leaf. So in that exact same order, we go on describing the plant. Habit, you write first. It's mostly trees or shrubs or whatever that plant is. Following that, we talk about its root. Does it have a taproot system? Does it have a fibrous root system? Is there anything special about the roots in that plant? That you write down. Following that, we write about its stem. Okay? Then following that, you write about its leaves. When you talk about leaves, you have to write about whether it's a simple leaf, compound leaf, what kind of venation do you see there, what kind of phyllotaxy do you observe, all of that, every detail that you've learned regarding leaves in the first session, all of that you'll have to mention very briefly in your description. Okay? After that, we talk about the floral characters, starting with inflorescence. So in inflorescence, you learned about 2 types. There's racemose and cymose. Whichever plant you're trying to describe, does it have racemose inflorescence or does it show cymose type of inflorescence? So every detail about the inflorescence you have to write. Following that, you'll talk about the parts of a flower. So is the flower actinomorphic, zygomorphic? Is it unisexual? Is it bisexual? How are the calyx, sepals arranged? How are the petals arranged? Are they free? Are they fused? talking about the androecium next. Is it attached to some other part? Has it fused to form bundles? Then talking about the gynoecium. Is it a superior ovary, inferior ovary? How many couples are there? All of that you have to write. Okay. So then you will talk about the fruit, what type of a fruit it is. And then finally about the seed. Number of seeds that are present in the fruit, whether or not they are endospermic. That is about the description. After this, you will have to draw the floral formula and the floral diagram. Floral diagram basically is a diagrammatic representation of the flower. It looks like this. We'll get to this in a little bit. And floral formula. In a floral formula, we make use of symbols to represent whatever we have described. All right. So let's get started to understand about the symbols that are used in a floral formula. You already know about so many characters in flowers, right? Some flowers contain bracts, some of them don't contain bracts, some of them are actinomorphic, some of them are zygomorphic. So to represent all of these conditions, we make use of letters and symbols, okay? So when you put all of this in a formula, you get the floral formula of that particular plant or that particular family. So let's begin to understand what are the different symbols and letters used to represent the different floral conditions or structures. All right. So let's start. There are a couple of them that you'll have to remember here, but they're very easy, simple. So there's no need for you to get tense looking at this table. All right. So let's start off with the first one, which is BR. So when you are describing a plant that has flowers which bear bracts, then we say that condition is bracteate. If bracts are absent in the flower, we refer to it as ebracteate. So whenever there is bracteate condition seen, we represent it with the symbol BR. BR for bracteate, EBR for ebracteate. Ebracteate means bract is absent. You do not see bracts in that particular floral family. Coming next to calyx. You know, calyx includes sepals, right? Collectively, all the sepals together is called the calyx. Now, calyx is represented with capital letter K. Uppercase K represents calyx in a floral formula. Now, calyx will have a number of sepals. You will write the number of sepals as a subscript to K. So, K, N. Over here, N represents the number of sepals. If, for example, there is a flower that has 5 sepals, you will write K subscript 5. If those sepals are free from each other, if it is a polysepalous condition where the sepals are not fused, it's going to be that way. But if in case the sepals in that particular flower are 5 in number and they are fused, then we use brackets to represent that. Okay. So K is for sepals. There are 5 sepals. In case it is free, you don't enclose them within brackets. If you enclose them within brackets, then it means that they are fused. So for free sepals, this is the symbol that we use. And for fused sepals, this is the symbol that we use. That's about the calyx. Very similarly, for corolla, we use the letter C. Corolla includes petals, right? Again, you write a subscript for corolla as well, indicating the number of petals that are present in the flower. If a flower has 5 petals, and they're free, you will write C5. If the number of petals is 5 and they're fused, you write C5 within brackets. So this represents free petals or polypetalous condition. If you put it within brackets, it represents fused petals or gamopetalous condition. All right. Now let's talk about the perianth. I mentioned in the previous session that sometimes in some plants, the calyx and corolla, the sepals and petals are not clearly differentiated. In such cases, they will have just a single whorl, which is called the perianth, and its units are called tepals, right? So if a flower has tepals and not sepals and petals, that whorl is called the perianth, and the letter that is used to describe it is capital letter P. Very similar to calyx and corolla, you will represent the number of tepals as a subscript. Okay, so if this has 6 tepals, let's say, you represent it as a subscript, the number. If they're free, no brackets. If they're fused, you add it within brackets. So that's about the non-essential or accessory whorls of a flower. Now talking about the androecium. Androecium is represented by capital letter A. Again, the subscript will indicate the number of stamens that are present in the flower. If there are 10 stamens, you write 10 here. If they are free, no brackets. If they are fused, then it goes within brackets. I told you that sometimes androecium or stamens will fuse with other floral whorls such as petals or tepals, right? We call that epipetalous or epiphyllous condition. In case the stamens have fused with some other whorl like petals or tepals, what we do here is you have to write a curved line starting from A to C. Remember what C is? C stands for corolla. If the stamens have fused with the corolla, then you represent that by drawing a curved line from A to C. Similarly, if the stamens have fused with the tepals, then you represent a curved line from A to P. This indicates that the stamens are fused either with the petals or with the tepals. Alright, now let's talk about gynoecium. Gynoecium is represented by G. Similar to the other whorls, the subscript will have the number which will represent the number of carpels. If there are no, if they are free and they are not fused, there is no brackets. If they are fused, there is bracket. We learnt about flowers, different types of flowers based on the position of ovary with respect to other whorls, right? We learnt about hypogynous, epigynous and perigynous. So that also can be described with the help of the floral formula. If the ovary in a gynoecium is superior, then you draw a line below G. This indicates that ovary is occupying the topmost position and all of the other whorls are arising from below it. If there is an inferior ovary in the flower that you're about to describe, then you draw a line on top of G. This indicates that the ovary is the lowermost, all of the other whorls will arise from above it. Then, talking about the symbols used to represent symmetry in flowers. If flowers are actinomorphic, it's represented by this symbol where you draw a circle and a cross within the circle. If it is zygomorphic or if it exhibits bilateral symmetry, then you represent that with the help of this percentage symbol. If they are bisexual, meaning a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, then we represent it with this symbol. If it is unisexual, if it is a female flower, then female flower is pistillate flower, right? If it is a female flower, it is represented by this symbol. If it is a staminate flower, it is represented by this symbol. If a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, then we represent it with this symbol, which is the symbol for bisexual flowers or a bisexual condition. Alright, so these are the different symbols that we are going to be using in the floral formula after we describe a flower or a flowering plant. Alright, so all of the different conditions in a flower you can describe with the help of these symbols. Now let's move on to talk about the floral diagram. What is a floral diagram? Floral diagram is something that looks like this. It looks like mandala art, but that's not what it is. With the help of this floral diagram, you can get to know a lot of things about the flower. For example, from the floral diagram, you can get to know about the number of parts of a flower. How many sepals are there, how many petals are there, how many stamens, how many carpels, all of that you can find out by just looking at a plant's floral diagram. Also, how they are arranged, whether the androecium is epipetalous, whether the sepals are fused, whether the petals are free, all of that you can find out from the floral diagram. What is the relationship relation they have with one another. Like for example, if any of them are fused, like if the stamen is fused with the petal or if the stamen is fused with the tepal, all of that you can find out with the help of the floral diagram. That is what this statement also means. So basically, in a floral diagram, we represent different floral whorls in concentric circles. So whatever you're looking at here, let me use a dark green color to represent the, this is basically the floral formula of family Brassicaceae. Here, you are looking at the outermost whorl represents the arrangement of sepals in the flowers of Brassicaceae or the mustard family. Okay, so here, outermost whorl, whatever you're looking at in green, this is the sepals. So there are 4 sepals here. Outermost whorl represents the sepals. How do we write it in the form of a floral diagram? We write it as K for sepals. There are 4 in number and they are not fused, so you write K4. Next, let's look at the petals. The petals are in the next whorl. 1, 2, 3, 4. Petals are represented by C. They are 4 in number and they are not fused. So this is how you write it in the floral formula. How you differentiate between sepals and petals in a floral diagram is, the sepals will have these kind of pointed structures, whereas the petals will be smooth like this. Petals are drawn like this, whereas sepals are usually drawn like this. Okay, so that is how you can find out which is the sepal, which is the petal. Always it's going to be just like it is in the flower. Outermost whorl will be the calyx, followed by that you will have the corolla, then you have the androecium, then you have the gynoecium. All right, so that's about the petals. Over here you have androecium. There are stamens here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 stamens here. Androecium is represented by letter A. So there are 6 here. Here you can see tetradynamous condition. I've already told you about it in the previous lecture. Of the 6 stamens that are present, 4 are tall and 2 are short. So you write it as 4 plus 2. Then you have the gynoecium, right? This represents the gynoecium. This is a superior ovary, so I'm drawing a line below it. There are 2 carpels that are fused, so I'm going to write it like this. So when you look at the structure of this flower or floral diagram, you can also make out whether it is actinomorphic or zygomorphic. This is an actinomorphic flower, so I'm going to use this symbol. And since it is bisexual, having both androecium and gynoecium, it is bisexual, so I'm going to use this symbol. So this will give us the floral formula of the family Brassicaceae. All right, now you must be wondering what this dot is that is there on top of the floral diagram, or what that represents. So basically that represents the position of the mother axis. So if this is a stalk and here is where the flower is born, this point is represented as a dot here. This is called the mother axis. That is the axis from which the flower will arise. So that is represented in the form of a dot here. So with respect to this dot, you're going to draw the floral diagram. So the position of mother axis with respect to the flower is represented as a dot on top of the flower. So over here, like I already mentioned, you have calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium that are drawn in successive whorls from outside to inside. All right. Now let's talk about family Fabaceae. Family Fabaceae is basically the pea family, which include your pulses. So this family was earlier called Papilionoideae. Remember I told you about Papilionaceous corolla? When I discussed aestivation with you, we learnt about one type of aestivation called vexillary aestivation. When I spoke about that, I told you that that type of aestivation is specifically found in the pea family, and the petals of that kind of flower with that aestivation will look butterfly-like. So there I mentioned that it is also called Papilionaceous corolla. So Papilionoideae means butterfly-like because flowers of this family, the petals are butterfly-like. That is why it used to be called Papilionoideae, and this was a subfamily under Leguminosae, but right now we call it family Fabaceae. So distribution, where can you find plants belonging to this family? You can find them all over the world. Talking about the habit, are they herbs, shrubs, or trees? You find all different types here. Herbs, shrubs, and trees, all of them can be found. Talking about the actual description of the vegetative parts, we'll start with the root. Since this is a dicotyledonous plant, the roots here are taproot system, and they show the presence of certain nodules. Okay, so these nodules are swollen structures that you find in the roots. Basically, in these nodules you can find symbiotic bacteria such as rhizobium, and this helps in the fixation of nitrogen. These bacteria reside in the roots of these plants. They form nodules, tiny swellings in the roots, and they reside within the root. Why I said symbiotic is because these bacteria help the plant get nitrogen, and in turn the plant provides the bacteria with food. Okay, so such nodules can be seen in the roots of these plants. Talking about the stem can either be erect or it could be a climber. Coming to the leaves, alternate phyllotaxy. That means at each node you will find only one leaf. They may be simple or pinnately compound. When I talked about the variations in leaf bases in the first session, I told you that there is a swollen leaf base which is called pulvinous, and that can be seen in the pea family, remember? So over here the petiole of the leaf is swollen. The leaf base is swollen, and so we call it a pulvinous. So in these plants you can see a pulvinous leaf base. Exstipulate. Exstipulate means the leaves lack stipules. Stipules are paired small leafy structures that are present near the leaf base. They are absent here, which is why we refer to it as exstipulate. Venation is reticulate. It's very clear, very obvious, because this is the dicot family. The leaves will obviously show reticulate venation. All right. Now let's talk about the floral characters, starting with the inflorescence. Inflorescence is of racemose type. What does that mean? It means that there is indeterminate growth of the floral axis. The tip of the floral axis does not terminate with a flower. Older flowers are towards the base and the younger flowers are towards the tip. This is what we learnt about racemose in the previous session. I hope you remember. So in this family, we do observe racemose type of inflorescence. Talking about the flower. Flower is bisexual, which means it has both androecium and gynoecium. It is zygomorphic as well, which means it is bilaterally symmetrical. You can get two equal halves of this flower only if you cut it by one ventral plane that passes through the center. If you remember, when I spoke about zygomorphic condition in the previous class, I gave you examples of members belonging to the Fabaceae family or pea family, right? Talking about the first floral whorl outside, it's called calyx. Sepals are 5 in number. They are gamosepalous, which means the sepals are fused. Valvate or imbricate aestivation can be seen. Talking about corolla, characteristic feature of this family, petals are 5 in number. They are polypetalous. Papilionaceous, meaning they appear like a butterfly. They consist of a big standard petal, 2 lateral wings. We spoke about it in vexillary aestivation. and 2 anterior ones that are fused. Okay, so that is the kind of estivation that you see in flowers, in the petals of flowers belonging to pea family. Okay, and then clearly this is vexillary estivation. Talking about the androecium, when I spoke about cohesion of stamens, I said that sometimes the filaments fuse to form bundles and the anthers are free. We call that adelphi. In pea family, we can see diadelphous condition. There are 10 stamens in total, 9 of them are fused, 1 of them is free. Talking about the anthers, they are dithecous. Gynoecium, ovary is superior. It is monocarpellary. There's only one carpel, so there's no question of whether it is fused or free. Unilocular, there are many ovules. Obviously, in a pea plant, you've seen the pea pod, you've seen the beans, right? You know that each of them has many seeds, right? So that indicates that in the flower, the ovary would have had many ovules within it. Style is single. Fruit is called a legume. Seeds, one to many. They are non-endospermic. That means at maturity, they will not have any endosperm within them. So these are the characteristics of floral family, angiosperm family, Fabaceae. Now let's look at the floral diagram. So in the floral diagram, the outermost whorl is calyx. As you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. See how the calyx is represented with pointed ends while the corolla has smooth ends, right? So over here, this is the calyx. Calyx, there are 5 petals. We already saw in the previous slide that the petals are, the sepals are fused. It is gamosepalous. So how would you represent its represented in the floral formula? You will write 5 as the subscript and enclose that within brackets, right? So that is the calyx. Inner to that, you have the corolla. There's one large vexillum or standard, 2 lateral wings or alae, 2 anterior ones, that is called the carina, which is fused. So over here we have 5 petals. They differ in size. Petals are represented with capital letter C. You have 1 large petal, 2 relatively small lateral wings, 2 even smaller carina that is fused and forms the keel. Since these 2 are fused, we are going to represent this within brackets. All right. Now, let's talk about the androecium. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you see, all of these are fused. There's 1 free stamen. So that is represented as A for androecium. There are a total of 10, of which 9 are fused, which is why I'm representing it within brackets, plus 1 that is free. Inside that, we have the gynoecium. Gynoecium, it is monocarpellary. So you write 1. There is no question of whether it's fused or not. You see superior ovary, so you put a line below it. Talking about its symmetry and whether it's bisexual or not, we will have to represent that as well in the beginning of the formula. We saw in the description that the flower is zygomorphic, so we will have to write a percentage symbol. Since it is bisexual, it has both the stamen and the pistil, we will represent it with this symbol. So that will give us the floral formula of Fabaceae, and this is the floral diagram of Fabaceae, which you will have to practice. Is that clear? I hope it is. Let's move on. Now let's talk about the economic importance of Fabaceae. It's a very economically important family, commercially very important, because this family includes plants that produce pulses such as gram, arhar, same, moong, soybean, All of these plants belong to Fabaceae family or pea family. They are also the source of edible oils such as soybean and groundnut oil, soybean oil. You may have seen your parents regularly use that while cooking. Indigofera. Indigofera is the name of a plant from which a dye is obtained. You may have heard about these indigo dyed saris and kurtas and dresses and all of that, right? For that natural dyeing process, which is basically a blue colored dye, they make use of plants called Indigofera, which also belongs to Fabaceae family. Talking about fibers. Fibers can be obtained from a plant called sun hemp, which is also economically very important. Fodder for animals is obtained from plants like Sesbania and Trifolium. Plants such as lupin and sweet pea are used as ornamentals because their flowers are very pretty looking. Like I already said, the petals are shaped like butterflies, right? So therefore, they are used as ornamental plants. Mulethi is a plant that has medicinal value. It is used as medicine. So these are some of the plants which are commercially important, economically important, and belonging to family Fabaceae. It's very, very essential that you remember all of these names, okay? So you have to memorize the different examples that are given here, okay? Now, let's move on to learn about the second family, which is family Solanaceae. Like I already said, this is also a dicotyledonous family. It is also called potato family. It includes potato, tomato, brinjal, and all of those plants. Talking about its distribution, it's distributed in tropics, subtropics, and temperate zones as well. Habit, mostly they're small herbs and shrubs, small plants, short plants, but rarely you can even find small trees. Talking about the vegetative characters, root. Since this is a dicotyledonous family, the root here obviously has to show taproot system, right? So that is what it is. Stems, like I already discussed before, in the habit, it can be herbaceous. Very rarely it is woody. It may be aerial, which is the stem will be above the ground. Sometimes, like in potato, the stem is underground, right? It forms a tuber underground. The stem may be cylindrical. It is cylindrical. It may be branched. It can be solid or hollow. The stem is hairy. You can find hair, presence of trichomes on the stem. So the stem is hairy. Talking about the leaves, leaves show alternate phyllotaxy. At each node you have only one leaf. Mostly simple. Very rarely it may be compound. It's going to be pinnately compound. That means the leaves are going to appear feather-like, although leaflets will be arranged in the form of a feather. Exstipulate, it lacks stipules. Venation is reticulate because it is a dicot family, right? Talking about the floral characters, inflorescence, it is usually solitary or it may be cymose. Flowers are bisexual and actinomorphic. So they are bisexual, actinomorphic, exhibit radial symmetry. Calyx, sepals are 5 in number. They are united. They are persistent. This means that even after the flower, fertilization has occurred, ovary has transformed into the fruit, even after that, calyx will still be intact. You can see this in chilies and in brinjal, tomatoes. So when you buy a chili, you know that there is a green color stalk to it and it will have this thing, right? This is nothing but the calyx of the flower that has persisted and it is present even after the ovary has transformed into the fruit. So that is persistent calyx. Corolla represented by letter C. Petals are 5 in number and they are fused. United means fused. They show valvate aestivation. Andrecium. Andrecium, there are 5 stamens. Epipetalis means they are attached to the petals like this. If this is one petal, the filament of the stamen would have been fused with the petal. So we represent that with a curved line connecting A to C. Gynoecium. Gynoecium, bicarpellary. There are two carpels, that is obliquely placed. Obligately placed. Syncarpous, meaning they have fused. And ovary is superior. Ovary is superior means you have to draw a line below the G here. Placenta is swollen with many ovules. Placentation is axile. Placenta is swollen with many ovules. We know that all of the fruits that I spoke about just now, brinjal, tomato, chilies, all of these have a lot of seeds within them, right? So within the ovaries, you can find many ovules being present, and they show axile placentation. Fruits can either be a berry or a capsule. Seeds are many and they are endospermous. Okay, now let's talk about the floral formula. We already saw that the sepals are 5 in number and they're fused. So K, 5, fused. Corolla, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 and fused. Androecium, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 in number, attached to the petals. So that line. Gynoecium, 2 carpels that are fused, superior ovary. So that is about the gynoecium. This is actinomorphic. This is the symbol. It is bisexual. So this is the symbol. So this is going to be the floral formula for the family Solanaceae. If you look at the floral diagram, it's very clear. These curved lines joining two sepals or petals indicate fusion. See, previously, over here, you saw that it was not attached, right? So this means that they're not fused. If they're attached as a continuous line like this, or if there is a curved line attaching to sepals or petals, that indicates that that they are fused. Okay, so since over here you see epipetalous condition, the stamen is attached to the petals, you see a line arising from here. This indicates epipetalous condition of androecium. Okay, previously you saw that there was no such line joining the petals to the stamens, right? So here the stamens are connected to each other, which means they are fused. But over here you can see that the stamen is connected to the petals by a line. This indicates epipetalous condition. Okay, so in this ovary you have 2 carpels that are fused. This is one carpel, one side of the carpel. This is the other side of the carpel. They are clearly fused, and there is a swollen placenta in the center. You can even see axial placentation very clearly here, and you have the ovules arising from this central axis here, right? So all of that can be represented with the help of this floral formula. Now let's talk about the economic importance of family Solanaceae. Definitely very, very important because it gives us food. Tomato, brinjal, potato, all of these are plants belonging to family Solanaceae. We also get very important spices like chili from this plant family. You can't even imagine cooking without chili, right? They are important source of medicines because of plants like belladonna and ashwagandha. They have fumigatory, some of the plants belonging to this family like tobacco have fumigatory properties. Plants like petunia, which have very beautiful flowers, are used as ornamentals. So you will have to remember all of these as well. Now, let's move on to the family, last family in this chapter, which is Liliaceae. Liliaceae is a monocot family. So it is commonly called the lily family. And this is a characteristic representative of monocot families. Distribution, you can see it everywhere around the world, so it's worldwide. Habit, they are perennial herbs. Okay, vegetative characters, since it's a monocot plant family, obviously you will find taproot, fibrous root system here. The stem, like clearly mentioned in the habit, they are herbaceous. Sometimes they are underground bulbs, corms or rhizomes. Leaves, they are mostly basal. Alternate phyllotaxy can be seen. Leaves are linear in structure. Exstipulate, meaning it lacks stipules. Venation is parallel, obviously because it is a monocot plant family, right? Talking about the floral characters, inflorescence can be solitary or cymose. Generally, it is a type of cymose inflorescence called umbel. So you can see flowers arranged in umbellate clusters in this particular family. Flower is bisexual and actinomorphic. So both stamen and pistil are present, actinomorphic. They are radially symmetrical. Here you do not find distinction between sepals and petals. You have only one whorl of non-accessory whorl, that is perianth. Tepals are 6 in number, arranged in 3 whorls, and they are fused. So perianth, 3 plus 3, 3 arranged in each whorl. And you can see valvate estivation here. Usually these tepals fuse to form a tube-like structure. Okay. Andrecium, stamens are 6 in number and they are fused to the tepals. Okay. So andrecium, this is not epipetalous, this is epiphyllous. They are not fused with the tepals, they are fused with the perianth. Okay, they are not fused with the petals, they are fused with the tepals. So that is represented like this. Here you have 6. Then gynoecium, tricarpellary. There are 3 carpels. Syncarpus, they are fused. Ovary superior, draw a line under G. Trilocular with many ovules. This also shows axile placentation. The fruits here can either be capsules or berries. Mostly it is capsules, very rarely it can be berries as well. Seeds are endospermous or endospermic. Alright, so now let's look at the floral diagram and the floral formula. So over here, you can see that the tepals are arranged in 2 whorls. So this is the outer whorl, 1, 2, 3. This is the outer whorl, this is the perianth. Inside that you have another whorl, 1, 2, 3. And these lines indicate that the tepals are fused. So you put that within brackets. Now talking about the andrecium. Andrecium, they are 6 in number and they are attached to the petals. Even the andrecium is in 2 whorls, you can see. It's attached to the tepals. So you will draw a curved line from here to here. You can see that these lines here represent that the stamens, the filament of the stamen is attached to the tepals. Okay, so here you have the anther. That's about the andrecium. Gynoecium, there's 1, 2, 3 carpels. The 3 carpels are fused. There is a superior ovary. Now talking about whether it's actinomorphic or zygomorphic, I already said this is an actinomorphic flower and also it is bisexual. So this is how you represent the floral formula for the family Liliaceae. Okay, so this is the floral diagram. You must learn to practice it. All of these are tepals. Okay, so this is the mother axis. All of these are tepals. Tepals are 6 in number and as you can clearly see there is an outer whorl of 1, 2, 3 tepals and there's an inner whorl of 1, 2, 3 tepals. Alright, so That's about family Liliaceae. Now let's talk about the economic importance of Liliaceae. You get vegetables like asparagus from this family. Asparagus belongs to family Liliaceae. Aloe vera, you know, it's a very good medicinal plant. It is used to calm any skin irritations. It's used to, enhance the shine in your hair. So that medicinal value it has. Ornamentals, tulip and gloriosa produce very beautiful bright colored flowers. They are used as ornamental plants. Colchicine is used in cytology. It is a chemical that you obtain from a plant called Colchicum autumnale. So basically, colchicine is a chemical that we use to arrest mitosis. If you want cells to stop dividing and if you want to stop mitosis from proceeding and getting over, we use this chemical called colchicine. Okay, so these are some of the economic importance of family Liliaceae. Over here at the end of this session, I've made a tabular column to help you revise all of the characters of these three families very quickly and effectively. So you can download this in your notes. Okay, so all of the characters are mentioned here. And with this, I'm going to sign off from today's session. I hope you've understood and followed everything that was taught in today's session. So until I see you next, take care.